everyone's just really excited to hear about what our favorite books are in all these different categories. So I want to read out what we've kind of got. So a good book, a good religious text outside of the Bible, a hidden gem that's a non-popular book, one overview book, one early church writing, and one book on deconstruction. Their favorite book in the Bible, that's going to be interesting to hear what everyone's is. A novel, a current favorite, one book that shaped you, and the book that you believe everyone should read.
Ovid got famous for writing all these love poems. He was a poet. And then when he got super famous, he put together the Metamorphosis.
That's what I had. I just pulled that off the shelf. I was like,
Metamorphosis, kind of like what Virgil does, is Ovid's looking around at all these local myths all across the newly found Roman Empire. This is a newly found empire. Augustus is inheriting the work of Pompey and his adopted father and Sulla. This has all been going on for the last century. Rome's conquering the Mediterranean. So they're writing these myths in Latin. These are Greek stories from Phoenicia, the Adonis myth of Venus and Adonis, which is a myth from Cyprus. You got these Phrygian Attis myths. And he's putting it all into one spot for the people in Latin to read. And that's Ovid's Metamorphosis. So this was a big deal. And according to Mary Beard, people had copies of this stuff in the temples in Rome. Hidden gem that I chose is The Ancient Mystery Cults by Walter Burkett.
Oh,
like it has like some images in the of these mosaics and frescoes that are in Pompeii and in Rome and stuff, and as he goes through all the different rituals and different rites of Isis and Serapis and Attis, Mithra, all that goes
wow.
deep. It goes deep.
So, Neil, what is your book?
Mary Beard's Religions of Rome. Hands down. I didn't even have to think about this.
She's a beast.
Well, it was going to be between Alexander to Actium. That was another one. That's a big chunky book about the world, the Mediterranean world between Alexander the Great and up until the time of Augustus. But I wanted to go with the religious text, and this is my favorite. It's like 90% of the sources I use for my videos is probably from something in here. And she just this is if you're like a big fan of ancient religions, you have to have this. Hippolytus Refutation of all. And this,
where have I heard that from before?
I brought it up in the last time I went live with you. Actually.
Oh yeah.
In this text, Hippolytus is refuting all the Christian heresies of all these, Nacenes and Carpocratians and Simonians and all these different Sethians, Valentinians, and he's describing them all, and he's trying to refute them. But I can't help it. The more he talks to them, the more I like them. So he actually backfired on this guy. He's trying to refute these Christians, but he's making me like them the more I read about them. That's why this is such a good book. He's refuting all the heresies, but really he's making someone like me. I guess maybe people back then thought he was maybe they thought his arguments were convincing, but I'm like, who are these Christians? They seem pretty cool. Why can't we have Christians like that today?
Neil?
My turn. Okay, so obviously I had to switch mine up from Derek's because we had the same choice. And then I was just going to go with the easy. Everyone knows Richard Dawkins' God Delusion. I was like, well, everyone knows that. I'm not recommending anything anyone doesn't know. This is just standard deconversion text that people know about. So I went back to the sources like I do. I go back to the primary sources, and I went with arguments of Celsus, Porphyry, and the Emperor Julian against the Christians.
You would.
And it is so good. And what it does is it highlights that before Christianity became the Church of Rome and became, all of the standard religion of all Europe and base. Before that happened, there were people who were arguing and making their cases against Christianity, and they were making the same arguments that you hear today from me and Derek, and they were going at Christianity. They were throwing everything at it, and they were really making good art. And Celsus is the best out of these, I think. Like he's like, wait a minute, you're telling me that this guy resurrected from the dead, nobody saw him, and he just went to this one girl, and then she told everybody, and we're supposed to believe that? like Celsus is like really ripping into this thing. Celsus is also bringing up like alternative theories as well. Celsus is like, well, he might have been the son of a Roman soldier
Pantera.
named
Is
Pantera.
this
So there's a lot of really good nuggets in here.
what is it called?
Celsus, get this one. So you can get Celsus separately, you can get Porphyry separately, or the Emperor Julian.
Arguments of Celsus.
This has everything all into one. It's Scholar's Select version. This is my go-to. The James Charles Worth Pseudepigrapha Old Testament text right here. It's got everything. Everything's in here. It's Old Testament, but
Right.
there is a lot of Christian era text too. So there's like the Jewish Orphic stuff. There's the pseudo Philo stuff. A lot of stuff like so. It's a little bit of everything in here. A lot of Greek, a lot of Hebrew, stuff like that. All obviously translated to English, but like it's got all the commentaries on the bottom from the scholars. A lot of people worked on this. Oh man, do I really stand by this? Lucan's Civil War. This is from Oxford Translations. Now, this book, it's also known as the Pharsalia, which is the name of the battle. It's written in the 1st century during the time of Nero, but it's taking place during the time of Caesar and Pompey, the Civil War. And why do I think everyone should read it? Why should everyone read this? Because it's not glorifying it. It's talking about how terrible war is. It's realistic, the approach, how bad civil war is. It tears families apart. People die. People are sad. Buildings are destroyed. Temples are destroyed. Like things just, it's not glorifying the war. It's a really eye-opening tale of Julius Caesar and Pompey and the, Brutus. All the characters are in there. Julia, who's the wife of, I forgot which chapter. It's one of the chapters in this book. Julia, who is the niece or daughter, or no, it's like his cousin or somebody of Julius Caesar, who married Pompey. So Pompey and Caesar had a marriage that brought their families together. She died when Caesar was in the war against Gaul. She comes back in this story as a ghost and like talks to Pompey about the war, and like it's so well written. So the original, if you want to go back to the ancients, Euripides Bacchae is the one. That's the play that was preserved. But in the 5th century of the Common Era, a man named Nonus of Panopolis wrote an even more grand and larger tales called the Dionysica. This is like taking Euripides Bacchae and blowing it up into it. Look how big it is. And by the way, this particular version has 48 translators working on this.
Wow.
I have to. I just knew Neil was going to bring some whack, like some amazing stuff. Like, I'll be honest, right? I have never really been a big fan of history. Like, I've found it boring. I've never really found it interesting. I started getting interested in history when I started watching Myth Vision because of early Christianity, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Hated Roman. I had a friend who always talked about Roman history. Got so bored by Roman history until I started watching Gnostic Informant's recent video on I forgot what it was actually called, but I was texting him so like Neil stopped replying to my text because I was just like, holy crap, this is so good, this is amazing, this is like, and it's really like, so I want to plug out Neil's channel before we go any further. Neil, you have an amazing video that's just recently come out. What is that?
If you have not seen this video,
this video 5 hours ago,
I'm in love.
When I got it, it was $225, but I got it used. And it's the Encyclopedia of Ancient Greece. Huge book. Right? I looked at it now. It's not as much. It's like $50 right now. It must be outdated now. So I thought this was going to be the answer to that question.
Is it by Simon?
It's by Nigel
Wilson.
Yeah, it's got all your sources in there. But this is still worth $110 right now. And it's the Oxford Classical Dictionary, and this has just got everything you need. This is like $110 book right here. So, but yeah,
awesome.
That's probably my most expensive book. Yeah,
awesome.
I get them all used though. I look for used ones.
Yeah, how good is used?
Yeah.
Damn.
Okay. Well, Derek, do you want to say goodbye, Neil, or do you want to stick around
I'll
until
still
you
got
have to?
5 more minutes, so I'll just pop out quietly and when it's time.
Awesome. Well, I do want to mention, guys. I said at the start, go check out Gnostic Informant's channel on YouTube. Your most recent video is I've heard.
It is
I
so
was asleep.
good.
Thank you.
But,
I appreciate that. I really appreciate that.
But just go check it out, guys. It's a beast.
Ericooni, it's all her,
a beast.
man. It really is.
Yeah.
It takes
the
a good
reason why it's
interviewer to bring that out of scholars, though. So you do good.
Thank you. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
bro.
It's a good video.
Constellation Pegasus, thank you so much for the super chat. Did anyone cry when they read Where the Red Fern Grows book? I haven't read it.
I haven't read that either.
No, I haven't read it.
I haven't read that.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, might have to read
sad,
it.
though. It sounds sad the way you're describing it.
Yeah.